In March 2022, a passenger flight carrying 132 people started nosediving around eastern China. And the crew member and everyone on board, they started panicking, trying to save the flight. Unfortunately, about 3 minutes later, the flight hit the ground and every passenger in that flight perished instantly. Now, airspace is one of the most regulated, and it is the reason why it is the safest means of transportation. So, every air accident is always heavily investigated. The open source aviation network collaborated with Open Sky Network to find out the cause of the accident. But the problem was that the code was there, the algorithm was there. So whenever accident happened, they always analyze the flight record to find out what went wrong at one point in time. So when they garnered all this data, they were unable to analyze it simply because the documentation they were meant to use was written purely in engineering language. And then a Chinese lady, Chen, joined an open source project. She's a technical writer. And then, due to her experience in aviation, she was able to rewrite the documentation and they were able to use it to analyze the accident flight. And then, Boeing 737 was the accident craft. The manufacturer took the documentation to also analyze planes that are currently actively in use. And they had to recall those planes, about 27 of them, to fix the issue that happened in the accident. So Chen did not only just contribute to open source, she saved potential life, potential air accidents that could have happened. That is the beauty of open source. My name is Akinola Abdulakim. I am also known as Agba Akin. And today, in this session, you and I are going to be talking about open source. How non-coders, and when I say non-coders, I'm referring to designers, I'm referring to technical writers, I'm referring to community managers and everyone that contributes immensely to open source without writing a single line of code. So this is the accident plane. It was nosediving at 200 knots and it hit the ground and perished instantly. Let me talk about my own personal experience. I am who I am today because of non-coders, because of an open source project that I worked on and how successful it became because non-coder contributed to it. But before I get to that story, let's talk about WordPress. WordPress is a CMS, content management system, an open source project as well, that is used to create websites. And I'm sure most of the people in this room must have heard WordPress before. But in 2008, WordPress was dying. People were not using it. And the reason they were not using it was because despite the fact that it was advertised that you could implement or install WordPress on your hosting in 20 minutes, it was heavily difficult for people who are non-technical, even technical people. It takes a lot of time to install WordPress at the time, simply because the documentation was just too much. Install MySQL, do this configuration, do that configuration, and people would rather just code from the ground up instead of using WordPress at the time. So it wasn't that Matt's code was bad, the creator of WordPress. It was just that there was not enough community support. Then 3 people joined the project. Zauban, Andrea, and Josepha, 2 ladies and 1 guy. And they reformed WordPress. One was a community manager that was actively taking feedbacks from users and was using it to improve the WordPress community. One was a technical writer who transformed the WordPress codex into technical jargon, right? And then she spoke with the technical team to implement a form where you can just do a one-click install. So most hosting provider now, if you want to install WordPress, is a lot more simpler. But back then, it was very difficult. It was nightmare to install WordPress. So because of the contributions of these people, it made it easier to use WordPress today. So this was WordPress in 2008. installing WordPress, PHP compatibility, MySQL, as a developer is even a nightmare. You have to do a lot of configurations in order to get WordPress running. But now, you just enter your database name, password, and then boom, you're good. You have a WordPress website. So let's talk about the practical guide, how to start contributing to open source. Think about what you know outside of coding, right? Do you love explaining things? Then I think technical documentation writing will be the best aspect of open source that you can go to. Are you obsessed with user experience? How much do you care about user? How much do you care about things looking sleek and fine? If that is the kind of person you are, then you can definitely contribute in terms of UI UX. Now, do you speak multiple languages? Then you can be a translator. And do you feel good bringing people together, creating this type of gathering? Then definitely you can be a community manager. Or are you the type that you like testing softwares? You like finding out whether a software is good, whether it's compatible, whether it's something you would like? Then you can consider testing and bug reporting. So step 2, find projects that you need or projects that need you, Head to GitHub, search for labels like good first issues, help wanted, documentation, design, or translations. Projects with less stars are usually more welcoming to beginners, so you can easily contribute to projects like that. Then step 3 is taking the actual step. Don't just look at a project. Don't just open your GitHub and then forget that you've done something. Like, take action immediately. It could be as simple as configuring an env file by configuring the example env, so that when a developer wants to implement, the project, they just copy the env and then replace the API keys. So let me tell you my own personal success story in open source. So in 2017, I was fresh out of Udacity. It was a nano degree course sponsored by Andela. So I had a tutor then that was very invested in open source for mobile application development. Her name is Angela Yu. Some of you are probably familiar with her. So I got interested in open source, and then I went to GitHub and I found a project. It's called Siberian CMS by Extra Balls. So it is more of like a WordPress, but for apps. You can use this to create cross-platform mobile apps without necessarily knowing how to code. So I forked that project. I got my classmates in on it, right? And then we started working on it. But we made a mistake. All of us were developers. All of us were technical. So we were just doing technical guys, technical guys, when they design, you know how terrible it looks. So this is the result of our terrible UI at the time. So some of the things that we were supposed to implement as that a designer would think about out of the box, we didn't, because we were just developers. So when we released the project as open source as well, there was a lot of adoption. Then we started thinking about, how do we monetize this? Okay, to monetize this, we are going to create a lot of trending startup apps features that user who uses this software can add to their app and create a startup out of the box. So we created features like ride-hailing app, delivery, food delivery, and all of that. But people don't know that this feature exists because it is not in their dashboard. You need an upgraded account to be able to see these features. We only wrote it in our pricing page that this feature exists. Most users does not actually know that it exists because they may never know, even if they never goes to our pricing page. And then there was a designer at the time that wanted to create an app. So if he found our platform and then he looked at our UI and he felt it was terrible. So he sent us a message that this UI, I think I can improve it. Okay, submit your work, let's see what you can do. And then in about a week, he designed something so sophisticated that even us were wowed. And then we implemented this design. Of course, our project is open source. And we said, okay, let's try it out. We implemented the design. And when we did, our revenue skyrocketed to almost 130%. So, and it was because of a single reason. Now, instead of users having to go to our pricing page to know that we have a feature that they can use to create their startups, now they have it in their dashboard. They only need to add that feature in their app, and then before they publish it, then they will pay for a pro version. They can add it to their app, they can do testing and every other thing. But before they publish the app, then they have to pay. So I think that was what skyrocketed our revenue. But without this guy, I mean, all of us our life changed instantly. Everybody that worked on the project, all my classmates, that changed our life because I can't even, if I quote numbers of how fast the revenue grew from zero because of this simple design contribution. And we had to contact the guy and give him contract, but he wasn't willing to work with us for a long time. So he was just with us for 3 months. It was the most amazing 3 months that we've ever had. And our life changed because a designer decided to contribute to open source. So this was Swift Speed before him, and this was Swift Speed after him. When he contributes, you can see the massive changes in the UI design. Everything was sleek and it was straightforward. Now, numbers don't lie. I'm going to talk about the impact that open source has made to projects that we know. So there is TensorFlow, Blender, LibreOffice, but it is mostly positive stats. But the one I'll majorly talk about is Python. So Python community grew by 400% in over 4 years just because of community, just because a lot of people were contributing, a lot of people were opening first issues, a lot of people were helping themselves in terms of design, and it grew by over 400%. I don't like Python, by the way. So this is my last slide. Please listen attentively. The projects we love weren't built by code alone. They were built by people who cared enough to make them better. One word, one design, one community at a time. Remember, the beauty of open source is that selfless help is always coming. And you know where from? From people like us in this room. Many dying projects need you to stay alive, like my project, like WordPress, as at the time. You don't need permission to make open source better. You just need to begin. Thank you very much.